I'd like to kick off with an observation. While traveling to mountains in Asia and Europe, I've noticed that there are more and more Chinese hikers and climbers that are pushing themselves farther into the great outdoors. So, is there a boom in adventure travel in China?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would say yes.
I always say definitely. We see a big boom in terms of outdoor lifestyle in China especially since 2023.
And the number of people entering in outdoor sports increase, while people are getting closer to the nature and benefiting from it.
And would you say that this rising interest in the outdoors also indicates that more people in China are interested in nature and protecting the environment and maybe even fighting climate change?
I think it will also stimulate people's love for nature and inspire their interest in protecting nature and addressing climate change issues.
Yes, I totally agree with Vivian. Of course, first of all, they want to enjoy lifestyle. But secondly, I think they are conscious about climate change.
Welcome. This is On Thin Ice, a podcast by Iceworm Media in partnership with the Bali Peak Outlook Foundation. We bring together the best explorers, business leaders, and innovators to discuss concrete solutions for accelerating the transition to a more sustainable way of living. I'm your host, Paolo Bosonin, and I'm honored to welcome today's guests. Vivian Han is a former corporate executive turned explorer who became the first Chinese woman to climb Everest, both from the Chinese Tibetan side and from Nepal. With her charity, she has been providing scholarships for girls in remote areas of China. Thanks for joining us from Shanghai, Vivian.
Hello, Paolo. I'm glad to participate in today's discussion.
Vivian, you've climbed dozens of mountains in your career. Has your climbing season started for 2024, and what's on your agenda?
And I will lead a team to climb the mountain Kilimanjaro, the highest peak of Africa, in July this year, to raise funds for my new charity fund, which name is Climb for Peace. Climb for Peace charity fund will focus on the issues related to the sustainable development of people and the environment.
And we'll certainly want to talk more about that in just a moment. Let me first, though, introduce our other great guest today, Lena Yang. Lena had a stellar career in marketing. She's held senior leadership roles in media groups such as Hearst, and she's currently at the helm of the publisher of Women's Wear Daily China. Welcome to On Thin Ice, Lena.
Hello, Paolo and Vivian. Nice to meet you here. And hello, everyone. I'm Lena. I'm working for the media for more than 30 years, and I love media business because it can really help the change of the world.
Lena, in your work, you have created awards and programs for companies to adopt a greener approach to business. Do you have any events on the agenda right now?
So this year we are going to start with our program of sustainable fashion summits, and then we'll follow up by a conference and also a consumer event to engage consumers together, because we believe the sustainable changes and greener lifestyle changes is not only from the business leaders, companies, it also comes from consumers. So we are going to launch Green Walk, which is totally linked to our topic today.
So let's dive into this topic. Following years of rapid economic growth and the expansion of megacities, China is facing some major environmental challenges. The government has set a goal to become carbon neutral by 2060, but we are also seeing grassroots initiatives and people like yourselves taking action. So we'd like to focus on that today. Across the board, private companies of all sizes are promising to fight greenwashing. Some young people in China are leaving cities to work in the countryside again after some mass migration to megacities over the past decades. And on social media in general, posts about conservation are extremely popular in China. So we want to try to understand if there is a cultural shift, and what does this cultural shift look like on the ground? Can you tell us, in your opinion, is climate change a priority for people in China right now?
The change has been actually accelerated with COVID because it makes actually people suddenly stop and think about what our lifestyle it is and what is important in life. And that's the reason why we talk about the outdoor lifestyle. Now it's booming in China. Some figures showing that the cycling have been 400 times on search engine until 23, and mountain climbing 120% increase. So we can see there really a change of people's mind on it. And let's come back to the industrial changes. It's definitely come from government's policy because we know that how is China works. We set up a target and then the whole industry will move forward on it. So we'll find a solution to how we can move forward to a greener industrial development. And this is definitely have a huge impact on the industry. Since 4 years, we see more and more companies, they come out with their ESG report and their sustainable development strategy. Nowadays, those companies are much more focused on how they can really go into depth on their manufacturing, on their logistic part, on their store to make really a change. So we see both sides changes. One side comes from the consumers conscious and consumers awareness about the climate change issue. Another side is the responsibility of the company. They are now much more conscious about what they are doing.
And in my opinion, I think that China is a large country and China needs to fulfill its commitment to the United Nations. This is not only a commitment, but also an action that each citizen of the earth must take now for the sustainable development for our future generations.
You have both been very active in this space. What are the most urgent issues, in your opinion, that need to be addressed before anything else happens? For instance, Lena, what are the biggest priorities in Chinese cities, since we know that Chinese cities face a number of environmental issues?
You actually send out a very complex questions because I think every issue are urgent today on every aspect because it's such a complicated issue today when we talk about climate changes. And what I see, of course, there's efforts on the government side, on the industrial side. But I think for the China, most urgent and challenging part is how to educate and inspire a population of 1.4 billion. Okay. And we see in the city like Shanghai, like Shenzhen, people are much more conscious. So the recycle system have been set up, decrease the usage of plastic have been set up, etc. But I think the most important and very hard part to achieve in China is how we can really educate such a huge population and build up a real sustainable lifestyle. We understand the company, they have their own side, the much more complex problem to resolve on green energy, greener manufacturing, greener and transparency of sourcing, etc. But really from the consumer side, if you want to just, as Vivian said, that is the responsibility of all human beings on earth, but how we can actually inspire, engage such a huge population, I think this is really quite an urgent issue here, yeah.
And Vivian, when it comes to natural environments and regions that are outside of these zones where economic growth has been so fast and so big in recent history, when you visit those remote regions in China, how is climate change impacting them and impacting the people who live there?
When I climbing and hiking in China, I saw that the trash problem is the biggest problem. On some popular hiking trails and the mountain base camps, there is a lot of trash come from the hikers and the climbers, but also from the local people who provide the service to the hikers and the climbers. So I think that education is the most urgent issues.
Trash is obviously very visible, right? When you go to the mountains, and it has consequences for communities because trash needs to be processed and you need to do something with it. So you need an infrastructure. Our partners at the Bali Peak Outlook Foundation actually have been funding projects to clean up trash on Mount Everest on the Nepali side. Have you been part of any similar efforts on the northern side of the mountain? And are there any lessons you've learned by trying to educate and raise awareness about this issue in China?
And yes, in the year 2016, I climbed the Mount Everest in Tibet side. When we came down from the mountain after summit, and we cleaned up the trash along the way. And so far as I know, in the year 2018, the China's first mountain environmental protection foundation, which name is the Tibet Himalayan Mountain Environmental Protection Foundation, was established in Tibet. So since the year 2018, they have organized the local hammer to clean up the trash at the base camp of Mountain Everest, Mountain Choyu, and the Mountain Shishapangma every year.
I think I've read you have also been training people to leave no trace practices.
Oh yes, it's an interesting story. And the leave no trace, this concept is originated from the US in 1987. The purpose is to reduce the impact of human beings on the environment. And when I was hiking in a famous hiking trail in China in 2019, I saw a lot of trash in the trail. And in the campsite where I stay, I was shocked and heartbroken. After this trip, I went to learn leave no trace and became an instructor. And through workshops and sharing sessions to make people know what is leave no trace, that's what I'm doing now. Yeah.
And how is that being received by people you're meeting on the ground who are learning this practice?
I think in the recent 2 to 3 years, and more people, they know this concept. They know the leave no trace because especially during the pandemic, I think that in China, the outdoor industry is bloomed. Yeah. So there's more and more people, they enter into the outdoors, into the nature. That means that more and more people, they know to have to protect the natures, and they know what is leave no trace. Yeah.
I think you touched on a very important point, which is the boom and the scale of tourism in China. It's hard to get exact numbers, but I took a look at official figures and they indicate that China is indeed seeing a travel boom. In 2023, Chinese tourists took 1.8 billion trips just within China, just domestic trips. And this is bringing many more people to national parks and other attractions that weren't as popular before. So what I wonder, Vivian, before we move on to our next section is, what does this mean for the destinations that are seeing these record numbers of visitors? Are they benefiting? And at the same time, what are the challenges that this is bringing immediately to those communities?
I think for the tourist destinations, they are more economic income, but also bring new challenges to the local environmental carrying capacity and the government management capabilities. Yes, from this point of view, they benefit, and because obviously the consumption brought by the tourist boosts the local economics. But however, if the number of the tourists exists, the local environmental carrying capacity, and the government cannot manage it well, I don't think it will benefit in long term.
So are you taking any action to help put these measures into place or to help develop these activities more sustainably?
And from my side, just to promote the leave no trace to the local government. For example, there's a very famous tourist destination named is Sigunyang Shan. It's the mountain Sigunyang. It's in the west of China, in Sichuan province. And I have some relationship with the local government. Yeah, so I promote the leave no trace to them. and to suggest them to change their employment and then even to train the local people what is the legal notice. Yeah, I try to push it.
That's good. Now, tourism is one of many industries in China that have said that they're going to try to adopt greener practices. Lena, I'd like to turn to you to talk about big business here. There's a lot happening in the space of green investments in China, with the government proposing new rules to bring more transparency and a lot of initiatives that are being announced basically day in and day out. But truly, from your perspective, where do things stand right now in terms of the broader economy going green?
I think there's several layers we need to see on this topic. Of course, there are layers coming from government efforts. There's including policies to put some constraint or some control, especially about carbon emission. And that's a really very clear target for the government and also the target that we actually giving to the province. So it's quite clear in terms of strategy on the government's policies. This is one layer. And the second layer is how government actually encouraging the companies and especially big companies to move into it. So definitely that in the general situation in China, go a greener economy is definitely in the policy of the government. And I think that's all the industrial players and also even the consumer that we're quite conscious on it. Okay. But secondly, if we look into much more in the practice part, how this can be actually applied on the business level, we see there's opportunity into it that can help really the whole economy to grow, because it's actually this window of opportunity actually gives some new startup company to get into it, especially in the fashion business. I saw quite a lot of new startup companies come out with new material, come out with new design, or coming out with new softwares to really to move into the greener economy system. But at the same time, that the other part is that in the overall situation, economics is quite challenging.
And of course, it hasn't been an easy ride for Chinese stock markets lately, as they're down significantly this year. But do you think green technology and investments can actually help turn things around? Is it important to invest more into the greener economy precisely because the economy also needs it?
I do think so. Okay, I think that we should keep investing in the green economy, and also not only greener energy, but also on how actually on because China is the most important supply chain of the whole world, and so how really to help the industry for the transformation. It is important issue. So we see an economic opportunity over there, but at the same time, as I mentioned previously. At the same time, as the economic situation is hard, so how we can at the same time help the company to really to maximize their resources, not only on the business growing, but at the same time on the protection of the nature or the transition to a greener economic or manufacturing process. So I think that will be the key challenge we see today. But still, what I see is that as this is the direction we are going, there's still different creativities in terms of new companies, models coming out, not only on the green energy.
So do you think even if there are challenges and struggles that these clean businesses can keep growing and still have an opportunity to develop nowadays?
From my point of view, especially from my industry, what I see is that when we talk about the green industry, it can be a really large, different kinds of business we can see, or different kind of service we can see into it. So what I see is that there's new service and new models we can find out into it. And for example, last year, there's a Caring Awards here to encouraging the fashion industry or the design industry's transformation. And one of the projects is really quite inspiring. It is recycling of the porcelain, because China is one of the biggest porcelain production country, and their city called Tibet is the center of the old productions. But when we produce porcelain, there's a lot of waste. That porcelain cannot really naturally go back to Earth. So they're actually using all this trash or this leftover to produce new tiles. So it's actually a new business model coming from what's the leftover. So I think that when we talk about transformation, we really need to have new ideas, be creative, not focusing only on what we see as top company, like energy company, car company, but look into really the medium size or the small size company, which can really bring into new ideas and bring in new opportunities to the economy.
On that note, Lena, let's zoom in on fashion and beauty specifically. I should point out here that the Swiss fashion house Bali, which is funding the Bali Peak Outlook Foundation, also has a big presence in China and has been promoting more sustainable practices globally. But we know that both in the fashion and in the beauty industries, in particularly some segments like fast fashion, there is an urgency to address some big issues in terms of environmental damage. You've been talking about this and you've been working on it for years. Are you seeing any improvements today, and what's left to do?
From what I see, there's several different company size that make actually a difference. Okay, with their big size, like the group like LVMH, like Kering, like all these big players in the industry. So we see that they clearly that they have a very focused strategy to really achieve the UNDP 17 goals of development goals. Definitely that they are much more clear on the direction and they have a resource to invest on it. But what we see in China, and very interesting, is that since 4 or 5 years, the new coming up energy and new coming up talents into the field, especially for the young designers. The Shanghai Fashion Week just finished 2 weeks ago. And if you look into all these exhibitors and also all those designers, it is hard to find one designer who is not talking about the sustainable material, textile, sustainable cutting, or even think about the recyclable life cycle of the product. So that's, I think, the concept and also the consciousness is over there. I think people are really working on it to find a solution. But on the other hand, I think it's also very important, as I mentioned, that China is such a huge population country. So to move forward, we need really support from the consumer side as well. And I think the big company like Bali is playing an important role. Fashion is much more the most exciting and accessible product we have every day. And the information we receive every day. And I always share with all these big brands, I think that they are the best tools today to advocate for the topic, because they are not the only one by doing it on the packaging, on the design, on the transparency, on the sourcing, etc. But they are also the best one to really to tell consumer they can be part of the process. They can be part of the movement and transformation. So that the big brand like Bali and also the other brands, their campaign or their participation on the foundation's actions, I think it's really very important because they are the key, they are the channel, they are the spokesperson that consumers will get information in a very soft way and will be changed.
Following up on that, do you think consumers today consumers in China specifically, are expecting a change, and are they looking for indications that the clothes they buy, the fashion they follow also has ethical principles and values?
I think it's very hard to generalize Chinese consumers. It's a huge population, very well educated, urban, middle class, and they are actually quite into it, and they are conscious on it, and more they want to have green products. They want to let the brand and the company really be responsible for what they are doing. It's not necessary because they buy for green products, but really they pay attention to the company. They don't do wrong things to the nature. That's very important for consumers. But at the same time, we have another part of the population which is much more on the suburban part or on the countryside part, and they need to really have something affordable. Because question today is when we talk about sustainability, especially for fashion and beauty, we think about the product which are much more expensive. So how to really to make the green product accessible to everyone, and this will have an impact also on the consumer's behavior.
It's fascinating, and it's also a good transition to our next section, because on top of advocating for the environment, you are both promoting women's empowerment. And Vivian, you've been focusing specifically on those maybe rural areas or remote areas that Lena just mentioned. With your charity, you've been raising funds for girls in some impoverished areas. Can you explain a little bit more about what have you been trying to do, and can you tell us what has been your strategy there?
What I'm doing now is very interesting, and I lead the urban women to climb the high altitude mountains. And these women, they never climb a mountain in their life. And usually we will through 6 months specific training and the mountaineering skills and the knowledge learning. After that, and we do the climb together. And I help them to gain more life experience and extend their boundaries, which is the mountaineering challenge. And at the same time, we raise the funds for our charity fund through our social media. The money we raised is used as a scholarship, which is named as Unlimited Her Scholarships, to support the girls who live in difficulty in life, but they're studying very hard. And from the 2019 until now, we raised $300,000 and support 1,036 high school girls. Through the mountaineering, we empowered both urban women and country girls.
Have you stayed in touch with any of those beneficiaries of your scholarships? And do you have any interesting anecdotes or stories that maybe you would like to share?
I want to share one story. And there is the girl, and she's name is 自人正光. And when I know her, she's the level 1, the grade 1 of the high school in China. And she's dad was passed away years ago, and she live with his mother and the elder sister and the younger brother. And she's very clever and very good girl. And I spent 2 days with her and to visit her family, to stay 2 days with them, from the morning to the evening, to do some work with her and her mother. And the income of the whole family, it's her mother to plant some of the potatoes. That's the only income of the family. So the life is not easy, but the girl is very positive, and she also have her dreams. And she told me she want to be the first the soldier. She want to enter the army. Yeah. Why? I asked her why, because she said they never have a women to enter into the army in their hometown. So she want to be the first one. I say, oh, okay, yes. So we gave her the scholarship to support her. But finally, and last year, got a message from her, and she's very happy. She told me she got into the university in Chengdu. Yes, and I'm also very happy. And another thing is very inspiring is, and 2 years ago, I participated in a short film for Adidas, and I bring the 自人正光 with me together. And and I bring her and her sister together to Shanghai. Yes. And for her, that's the first time to leave home and first time to leave, to take the plane. Yeah. So she never out of the home. Yeah. So she went to Shanghai with her sister. You see a big world. Yes. And so that's very inspiring. Yeah.
And rewarding for you, I bet. Lena, you have led a lot of initiatives in the corporate world. Do you feel like the transition to greener models is as equal and as inclusive as it should be?
Okay, I think this is really a very good question. There's financial issue on it. There's, when we talk about a greener transition, the investment, financial part, but also investment on the talents. So it's really need the resources. And this is actually bringing a big gap between the big companies and smaller and medium enterprise. And for those smaller and medium-sized enterprise, it is really very hard for them really to think about the greener transition, as they are still fighting for their own life in the business world. So I think that's to be inclusive. We do need quite a lot of support, the financial system, to really to help them. And on the education level or consumers consciousness level, there's also a big gap, as I mentioned previously, between people well educated and people with less education. But there's a lot of things we can do to really to narrow down the gap, to really to put the resources together and to help each other to move into the green transition. To talk about the fast fashion, okay, this is really a very sensitive topic to talk. We know how fashion industry is huge pollution. But when we talk about the fast fashion, they do have a huge impact on their supply chain, on the manufacturing, on the textile, on the sources that are coming up. So I think the support is really built up the value chain on everyone who is part of it. To be inclusive is really talking about how we engage everybody on this value chain together.
Final question on that same topic. How do you actually do that? Also meaning, as a woman in a top executive position, how do you think others can actually put that into practice? And what advice would you give to the next generation of women leaders in China?
I think, first of all, stay passionate about life. Because when we love life, we love nature, we love people. And this is really the drive. That's when we're doing everything. And then when we talk about sustainability or charity, what comes naturally. So stay passionate. I think this is one thing. And stay creative. So I know that nowadays, and I have words for the young generation here, if they are listening to this, I understand that for the whole worldwide, there's a powerlessness feeling. And because of the economic situation, the geopolitics situation, makes all these younger generations suddenly they are facing a world that they don't know how to deal with it. All the problems happening at the same time. But as Buddha said, that liberation is coming from bitterness, from stubbornness. So be creative, stay passionate, and stay creative.
And that's very inspiring for sure. Vivian, do you have anything to add? What would be your advice?
I'm totally agree with Lena, but I want to say I think the love from our heart is the original power to driven us to achieve our dreams, the love.
And I'm sure the message will reach our listeners in China and around the world. Thank you so much both for our conversation today. We have to wrap up for this episode, but there would obviously be much more to say. As you mentioned, Lena, China is a vast country and one that we will keep watching closely here at On Thin Ice. For now, I'd like to thank our production team. On Thin Ice has original music by Nadir Kasim. Our script editor and editorial advisor is Dave Vetter. And thanks as always to the Bali Peak Outlook Foundation for supporting this podcast. The foundation aims to defend mountains around the world from the impacts of climate change and excessive tourism. Check out their website, that's balipeakoutlook.org. You will also find it in the description of this episode. On Thin Ice is a production by Iceware Media. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and download our shows. Please also give us a review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again to our guests for joining us today. See you all next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.